So we're here in Dundalk on the Point Road in a very old house, a very historic house, and I'm here with Charlie McCarthy, who has lived a lot of his life here. But before you came to this house, tell us a little the background of this house, Charlie.
This house was the Coast Guard Commander's house in the Coast Guard Row. It was built in 1805 and extended then in 1810, and then more extensions put on the houses on either side of it in 1848.
And these were all Coast Guard houses?
All Coast Guard houses, yeah. There were
So
nine. A man called Gallagher bought this house in 1950. He was the manager of Barrack Street railway station up here in Key Street, Barrack Street there. And he was from Mayo, and his wife was a nurse, but they never married. But they bought this. He bought this house in 1950 for £500. And he told me that I met him years afterwards. If he had £1,000, he could have bought the whole 9 houses.
9 houses.
Nobody wanted to live here. It was too far out of town. I knew a man up that worked at the quay up here, Caton Clark, and Caton told me that when he was a teenager, he was offered the end house for 80 quid. And he wouldn't buy it because it looked horrible. They had a yellow distemper on them, colour. And he wouldn't buy it because it was too far out of town, and he hadn't a bicycle. 80 quid.
But your connection with the sea goes back a long way.
Oh yeah, well, since early 1960s, 62 I think.
But you weren't born beside the sea, you were born somewhere...
I was born in Blackrock with the sea at my back door. We went out our back door into the sea. Born in the square in Blackrock.
And you went to sea for a while? Went
to sea in the 60s, yeah, 70s.
And before you went to sea, we were in Dundalk, and we were talking about a pub in town called Mark's Bar on Crow Street, which was not always Mark's Bar. You knew the history, more about the history of it, Charlie.
I used to pal around with Ronnie Roslin and Jack Gray and Gene Smith, and we used to we didn't like loud pubs. We used to like quiet places, and we would drink in Dean's and Bread Street, which was a tiny little pub, not much bigger than this room. Very quiet place. There was only 2 or 3 people in it. And the other place we liked was Grant's, number 7 in Crow Street. The number changed over the years. It could be either 6, 7 or 9 at one stage, but I don't know the number. But anyhow, it's really on the left-hand side of the arch in Crow Street, number 7.
And this was known in your time?
It was known as Grant's.
And Grant's, for who they were or anything about them?
Yeah.
You said there were people from...
The origin of the pub is, as far as I know, I've searched it back, there was a man called James Byrne from Hagerstown. And as far as I know, in the late 1850s, he had a shop there. I don't know what sort of a shop. I don't think it was a pub. It was a shop. And he lived there. He was a town commissioner as well. And there was another man lived in Crow Street at the same time called Patrick James Byrne, who was it was the same family. So he probably lived in the same house. There must have been bachelors, I don't know, but no mention of women involved in it. But he had a shop.
Was that B-Y-R-N-E or B-U?
B-Y-R-N-E. They came from Hagerstown. And in 1892, I think it was, his father Patrick died. And his father Patrick had a pub and farm in Hagerstown and died with no will. So the will went to court. There was a family dispute over it. And a brother seems to have got the pub, but there was a dispute over it, and it went to another court. And as far as I can see, his father died, no will. His mother Annie got the case, got the pub, and she handed it over to his brother, who didn't want it, or for some reason didn't run it. So in 1892, she transferred the pub to James in Crow Street, and I think that's where the pub started. And James Byrne ran it because there were so many. I think he owned another pub in Eyre Street, because I came across a reference to him selling a pub in Eyre Street later. But there was a number of Byrnes in Dundalk that had pubs. So to avoid confusion, he changed it to the name it was called the Exchange Bar. And that came from the Exchange and Market Company building across the road. That was built straight across the road from it. It's gone now, but it was a building, big, long, narrow building, built in 1858, and it took years. It went in. It was built by this company, marketing company. It was built for farmers and businessmen to transit their dealings, because the only place the farmers had when they were selling their cattle was the corner of the pub or the hotel.
The Queen's
in all sorts of weather, and they had no. So they got together and formed this company, built this building, and it ran out of money. It drug on until 1862. They went bankrupt, and the front of it was built. It wasn't finished at the back, so they reformed again, and a new company completed it. And what it was a long building called the Exchange and Exchange and Marketing, I think it was, company. But it was 14 or 15 offices upstairs, a couple of rooms downstairs, and a big long hall for the farmers and dealers to do their transactions and buildings. And there was a yard at the back where farmers could bring their cattle in and sell them there as well. And that was known as the Exchange building. So
this is across the road from.
That was across the road. That's where the name came. So James Byrne called it the Exchange Bar, but I don't think that name didn't last very long, because he sold it. He lived over it, but he sold it in 1902. He sold it to a lady called Mrs. Teresa Curran. And she was a daughter of Peter O'Hagan from Annie's out in Kilcurry. He was a farmer. And she had married Lawrence Curran, who was the sanitary inspector for Dundalk. His father had been sanitary inspector before that, also Lawrence Curran. But she bought the pub in 1902 from Byrne and ran it. And she sold it then in 1905. I think she probably had to sell it because he was a sanitary inspector, and part of his job was inspecting pubs and that.
So it was a clash of interests.
It was actually condemned about 10 years before she bought it, when Byrne had it. It and McGuinness's pub, the other side of the arch, which is later Charlie Riley's. Charlie only bought his pub in 1957, I think. He bought it from a man called Clark.
And were these separate pubs?
They were separate pubs.
But the livery was part of the hotel, was it?
It was part of the hotel, yeah.
So these were.
And the police at the time were not very happy about the fact that there was a gate from both pubs into the yard. They tried to get it closed, but I don't think they ever did. I can't remember if Mark had access to it. I think he must have. I know there was a little yard at the back when Grants had it. But anyhow, Mrs. Curran sold it to. She sold it on the 4th of November 1905. 31-year-old Kate Grant, daughter of Felix Grant from Drumbella, who was a farmer as well. And I think they had a pub out there as well, but her father was Felix. She bought it from Mrs. Curran.
A 31-year-old single woman?
31-year-old single woman.
To her father.
Well, I don't know, but where would she have got the money? I would assume that her father bought her, set her up with it. And she ran it for until 1916 with her sister, Mariam. And Mariam, in 1916, married Jack Gormley, who was the manager of, I think it was the Oriel Cinema. He was one of the few cinema managers in Ireland at the time.
Was that
But Jack, I think he came from Drogheda.
Was that in Park Street, Oriel?
No, Oriel was the Forester Hall in Market Street,
Market
I think.
Street.
My father actually worked there, and I think my father must have worked for him. My father worked as a projector and teller in it when he was a young fellow. But
so that red brick building was the Forester's Hall, was that?
That was a cinema.
It was built as a cinema?
No, I don't think so. But it was used as a cinema.
It was used as a cinema, yes, big
in the
room,
very early,
big hall at the back of it,
yeah, in the very early 1900s. And Miriam married Jack, and they had 2 sons and a daughter, I think. Brendan Gormley, he died young, and the other Gormley had a chemist shop in Bridge Street.
And that was the cinema manager's son, son and daughter.
Kate's nephews and nieces.
Right.
And the daughter was Mary Therese. And she worked with Kate in the pub when she became of age. And Kate ran that pub until 1947 when she retired. And Mary Therese had been working with her. And she transferred the pub to Mary Therese. And Mary Therese is the lady we know as Maeve Gormley, who married Mark. And when I started going into it about 1962, it was Grant's. We never knew it as anything else, only Grant's pub, Grant's bar.
Okay.
And Maeve was running it. Maeve ran it until about 1969, I think, when I can't remember when. Maeve, when we went in, we started going in 1962, and it was a quiet little pub. The only people that would be in it would be taxi drivers, who the taxi rank was across the road, and taxi drivers and farmers. And it never dawned on me for years until recently why the farmers were in it. But the farmers would have been there because they all seemed to come from around Fahard and out that side of the town.
North Louth.
They probably came to it because of the Grant connection and the O'Hagan connection, because people were very clannish in those times. So, but most of the people that were drinking were farmers, and they would be in town doing business and going there. And there were no young people in it really, except myself, Ronnie, and Jean, and Jack. And Maeve was a very reserved, conservative woman. She was a good bar manager. She always had bar ladies with her. There was a woman, I think the last one I remember was a woman called Mary Quinn, I think. But before that, I never knew her. I heard of her. There was a woman called Mrs. Lennon, who was barmaid there for years with Maeve. But she always had barmaids. There was always either 1 or 2 ladies behind the bar, and there was a little snug to the left when you went in the door, and
just at the window, was it?
At the window, yeah. And there was no ladies in it, but there would be ladies in the snug, and it would be the egg market was outside on the street on a Monday, I think it was, and no, it wasn't when I was in, but this is before I knew. But they'd be the only women that would come in. Would be the women in selling the chickens and turkeys and
you say it on the street, or would it be down at where Kelly's monument was?
We're down there, but they would be the only women that went in.
Yeah, very close.
And the strange thing is, there was no ladies in it. I remember when, in later years, when girls would start going in looking for the toilets, and Mark used to say, across the road, do you remember the green toilets across the road?
Public toilets, yeah.
They were horrible.
Yeah, stinky.
There were metal public toilets across the road, and that was the ladies. You had to cross the road. In later years, he added a ladies to it. I don't know how he did it. I think he extended into the yard of the back.
But Maeve ran it before we come to Mark.
But Maeve was running it
up to roughly what year?
Yeah, and Ronnie used to sing, and he had these. He had a lot of English folk stories.
Ronnie Roslin,
and Maeve used to tolerate it, but the farmers loved it. We had good audience. And then Mark got interested, Ronnie got interested in barrowns. I don't know how this happened, but Ronnie and Jackie and Jean, I used to go out to sea at the time, so I wasn't as much involved as they. But they used to go off on a Saturday morning up the mountain and shoot a goat. I wasn't involved in this, but it was described to me. They would shoot a goat, skin it, and they would take the skin and bury it in a hole with lime and leave it there for a month, I think, or 2 months maybe. Take it out and the hair would all fall off it. They would scrape it and stretch it and dry it. And Ronnie would then acquire a riddle. You know the riddles for riddles were common in those days. You don't see them nowadays. Builder's riddle. I don't know how he acquired it, but I don't think it would have been bought. But the goat skin would be stretched across and dried, and Ronnie became the first barron player in Dundalk. He made 4 or 5 of them, and Jackie had one, and Ronnie had one, and Jackie started playing a little bazooka or something, I know, and Ronnie had the barron, and Jean, I think, used to play a mouth organ. I'm tone deaf, so I couldn't involve in anything. I don't know how I got involved in traditional music, but I'm tone deaf.
But you said boys used to go off to the flats then, was that?
We used to go to the flats then, yeah.
Roughly what years was this?
1962, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You were at sea at this point, or
yeah,
before when you come home, was it?
I was in the B&I, so I was home fairly often. I was home nearly every weekend.
All right.
So we could go to flats. And as I said, the boys were the barons. Yeah, when Ronnie brought it into Maeve first, into the bar first, it was all right for a minute or two, and she copped on the smell.
The smell of it. Yeah.
And she reared up. There's something wrong here. There's something dead in there. And Ronnie just ignored and kept playing away. And Maeve got really, really excited about it. And eventually she copped it on and threw him out. We were barred for months until he convinced her that he got rid of the smell. He dosed DDT or something, disinfectant, and I don't know how he did it. But there'd be bits of hair and everything on it. It wouldn't be, there'd be bits of the goat's hair and smell it, the skin and sinew and everything on it. They were horrible things. And they were flat. The matter how much he'd be over at the fire trying to get them to dry out. But anyway, we started going to flats, and Ronnie would play. We started meeting musicians and singers, mostly singers.
What sort of flats? Where would the flats be?
Well, there's one in particular that I remember, Casablaney and Clonus, and we went to Scariff. We went down to Kerry. Went to the Wexford Flowers in Escorty. We went everywhere.
Who was driving? Who did the driving?
At the time, there was no drive. We used to hitch. We'd hitch everywhere. I hitched once on my own to Scariff, and all I had was a 10-shilling note and a black oilskin coat. And I remember hitching across the Kildare area, the Curragh, in bucket and rain at 11 o'clock at night, hitching, and I remember this big black van passing me. And as they passed, I recognised it was the Coyle brothers from Dundalk delivering meat down to Limerick or somewhere. And as they passed, they went through a puddle and drowned me. The water went up under my coat. I was soaked. But they didn't see me, of course. But anyhow, I got to Scariff and I got rotten drunk for 5 weeks. I mean, 5 shillings for a week. I slept in the coat in the field with the coat over me. Well, I didn't die. But we used to go. That's how we used to and then we'd hitch mostly. Until I got eventually I bought an old wee Reynolds 4 van or car that would transport us everywhere. But we started meeting musicians, and Ronnie and I would invite them back to Grant's Bar. And that's how the music started. Ronnie, Jackie, Gene Smith and me we invited the Dubliners back. I got very friendly with Felix, the piper, Felix Doran, and invited Felix, but poor Felix couldn't make it, but he did eventually, I believe. I don't think I was there the weekend he arrived. I got very friendly with him. I used to visit him in Manchester a lot.
And this was, you said Grants, was it still Grants when they...
It was still Grants, yeah, because I don't think the name ever changed.
Before Gormley's, it was always called Grants.
It was always
even under names, early times.
People did call it Gormley's, but I don't think it was a name. It may have ever changed. No, she didn't.
Right.
She never changed the name, because I do know that in 1966, I think, I remember her renewing the licence, and it was still Grants. Now, I don't know when Mark got the licence, but he did eventually. But anyhow, that's how the musicians started coming. We started inviting them, and they would come. And
may have encouraged this, or did she tolerate it?
Oh yeah, she did. But at the time, then Mark was taxi driving, and Mark would come in like ourselves for a drink occasionally in the cold weather, or in the hot weather he'd come in, and he eventually, Mark was a wheeler dealer. He'd get in anywhere. Eventually, when all this started happening, and these long-haired, hairy buggers with bits hanging out of them would start coming in, Mark convinced Maeve that she needed a man behind the bar because it wasn't getting safe. She was tolerating these hippos and hippies and dossers coming in.
He was probably encouraging.
He was very worried about her.
Yeah.
So he started helping her behind the bar, I think occasionally, and eventually he got a full-time job. And the barmaid, I think she left. There was barmaids later, but Mark became the barman, and as I said, I went away to sea then. I was in the Far East for nearly 10 years, but I went away about 1966, I think. But I know when I came back, it was Mark's bar, and there were different people, and there was young fellas in it that I didn't know.
So Charlie, you came back to Ireland roughly from the Far East. In what year were you back into Ireland?
Oh, I was back on and off a few times, but I was away. I came home eventually in 1978. I came home and I got a job, then worked in the harbour. I worked in the harbour then for another 20 years. But then I kind of fell out with Mark, as many people did. It's a long story and I won't go into it, but I fell out with him. Although I still often met him and I used to go in occasionally, but we were very close at one time, and I got very involved with him early on. He was a wheeler dealer, if ever there was one, and we came very close to the edge a few times in some of the deals we were at. But I started drinking then in McManus's for the 1960s, 70s, 80s, that then as yourself and many others did. But it had nearly ended up then.
Yeah. Who did the carvings? The wooden carvings that were in Marks? That wasn't your work. Because somebody at sea did those. Remember the plaques on the wall? They were like that wasn't you. You weren't a wood carver at sea.
No,
somebody did that.
I'll tell you, he got also. People were giving him stuff. He started accumulating. A lot of it was pure rubbish, but you couldn't tell Mark that. But do you remember the Jesse James poster that he was supposed to have got from America? There was a big article in the newspaper about it, and a photograph of Mark and Peter holding this up. It was supposed to be a genuine Jesse James poster.
A wanted poster.
Yeah, wanted poster. Yeah. You could buy them, but it doesn't in America. And I tried to tell him one day, oh no, it's on the good thing. This is on the new thing. I was alright, put it up. An awful lot of stuff he had up was genuine. But one I give him, I was in Swansea once, and I don't know if you remember the Torrey Canyon. It was a tanker that blew up in the Irish Sea and sank, and it was a famous shipwreck. And some of the lifeboats of it were taken into Swansea, and they were up on the quay there, abandoned. And I took, they had these grab ropes all around with wooden kind of floats on them. They were about the size of a tennis ball. And I cut one off and took it home. And I went and gave it to Mark. I said, that's a piece of the Torrey Canyon. Oh. And he hung it up on the wall. And then I remember telling someone, that's supposed to be a piece of the Torrey Canyon. Everyone laughed at it. How? You couldn't prove that it was. So he threw it in the bin. He threw the genuine, so I said to him, you threw the genuine thing in the bin and you have the false thing up in the, oh no, that's on the real thing. I said, you can buy them in America, Mark, for dozens, but so I'll get you one the next time I'm over there. I don't do that shit up in that. But anyway, he had a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, I used to look around the walls and be playing later on, and there's obviously something different on the wall.
It was interesting.
So there's a helmet from the crane.
The helmet was genuine enough, I think. Yeah, and there was a sword that was genuine. And but Mickey McKeown did a lot of work and gave him a lot of stuff, and did the famous painting on the ceiling.
That's right.
Yeah. But he. Well, as I say, it kind of fell out for him, but still. Used to meet him in Maeve, but I was very fond of Maeve. Maeve was a lovely lady.
She was her brother was the pharmacist or something.
Pharmacist, yeah, down in Bridge Street. Brendan and what was the other? Oh, I can't think of it. Dermot. Dermot had a chemist shop down in Bridge Street, and that was Dermot was and Maeve were Dermot's wife. And Maeve were nieces of Kate Grant. Kate Grant died. She retired in 47, and she died about 4 or 5 years later. I never knew her. My father knew her. My father lived in Castle Road, beside the Gormies, and he knew Kate very. My father used to go into the pub occasionally. He was very friendly with her. I never met him. No. Can't say I ever remember meeting her. I remember these young fellas coming in. When the musicians started then, Maeve or Mark was always changing the bar around and changing the place and trying to make it bigger. It used to frustrate him. Oh, I have one story for you. But he was trying to make the place bigger. He was very frustrated about it. And although it was still in Maeve's name, she gave him free hand to do. And he was all the time moving the bar from one side to the other, down to the back. It was down at the back once.
It's a very narrow bar.
And he was always trying to change the toilet, do something. The toilet was always a disaster. 1972, I think it was, or something. There was a big an international AOH parade parade in Dundalk. It was the biggest AOH get-together ever held in Ireland. I think it was, I have the date somewhere. Doesn't matter anyway but it was in 1972, I think. But there was over 70,000 people in Dundalk. There was, I think, 200 or 300 bands. There was bands from all over Northern Ireland, AOH bands from Monaghan, Cavan, Sligo, Dublin, Wexford. The town was abuzz, and Mark got very excited about it when he saw all these people. So, although he didn't own the yard, he got 2 tables and put them across the archway and went up to McCarthy Moors and got an order of beer, a lorry load of beer, and set them up, the beer crates up behind in the archway, and put myself and Ronnie behind the bar selling beer, bottles of beer.
Onto the street. We
had bottle openers and beer. And the thing is though, the bottle, I think, was 1 and 6pence at the time, old money. And Ronnie says, when we're setting her up anyhow, Ronnie says to Mark, we've no till on the, forget the till. He went up to the bank and he got 2 big bags of pennies and 6pences and 3pences. And he mixed them all up in 2 biscuit boxes and put them on the table, in the corner of the table. Now, when they give you on the 2 shillings or wherever it is, just hand them a handful of pennies. You can't go wrong. This is what we did. Nobody. And the other thing he says, the money was after changing at the time, and most of them from Northern Ireland, they don't understand the punt or the pound, and it's just it was changing at the time, so they're not query it. And if they do, tell them you made a mistake. But nobody ever queried it, and we got away with it. And he sold all the beer. There was about a lorry load of beer sold, and it wasn't even on his property. I could have ended up in jail. And myself and Ronnie pulling it away. I said, we drinking it through, we got scattered. There was money scattered all over the ground, and the place was pandering. And I remember that was a massive, you very hear people, the AOH sort of phoned it up afterwards, but I remember my father was a Hib, and I remember he got a seal of honour in the Hibs Hall. My father had a cripple, he was a short leg, he went round in crutches. But he was given a seat upstairs in the Hibs Hall where he could watch the parade going past. And I remember it was very big, but we didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what AOH was at the time until then. I knew my father was in it, but I knew nothing about it. Fra Kieran was big involved. Fra was big into the AOH. My father knew Mark long before I did. He came to town. He came to town on a lorry selling sweets, I believe, but I don't remember that. But when he settled in Dundalk, he got a job in McCourt's bar down Church Street, is it? Or Bridge Street? Church Street.
It's which McCourt? Is that the one at the?
Well, anyhow, it was Mrs. McCourt. Mr. McCourt was running. There was no men in it. He was doing it, and it was a long bar. I remember my father explaining it. It was a long bar in McCourt's, and Mark would be behind the bar, and pint of Guinness was either 2 shillings, I think it was, or 2 and 6. 2 shillings, I think it was at the time. But my father didn't drink much, very seldom, but he was in McCourt's one day at the end of the bar, and whatever angle he had, he could see up behind the bar. And Mark was selling, there was a good number of people who were selling pints. And when he'd take the money off the people, he'd go over to the till and he'd ring the till. But he'd always do this. And he'd go back and he'd give the person his change. Apparently this went on for nearly a year with Mark, until Mrs. McCourt copped on what he was doing. And Mark heard this story from Mr. McCourt afterwards. My father saw me, and it was a long time before she copped it on. What Mark was doing was, he was letting it was a half a crown, he'd let the half crown down and he'd ring the bell up and give you a man sixpence for his change. But the money was going down. Mark had these big sleeves on his coat, and he had a pocket down here with an opening this. The money would fall down, and when Mark would do this, it would go into the bank. She caught him, but she didn't. She just fired him. She cut her losses and fired him. She told my father.
Have you made his first bob?
That was made his first bob. But he was always at that sort of carry on. But
he did a lot of work with.
I'll tell you another story.
Yeah.
He asked me one day would I come with him. He wanted to buy a lorry. I said, "Why would you buy a lorry?" I'll tell you another story. He admits this himself later on the film. I would be reluctant to tell anyone, but he admitted this himself. He told me once, I think it was this same day we were doing this stroke, he told me, he says, I don't have a stutter at all. I developed this. I said, Mark, when I was young, I had a stutter like you. Oh, I don't have a stutter at all. I developed this. This is a game I have, he says. It means when I'm in an argument, he says, I have time to think.
Very good.
And he admitted that later on the video where you're...
Oh, with Tommy Sands?
Yeah.
I saw that Tommy says.
You read that, you'll see where he admits that.
I remember Tommy says, you like myself, Tommy, you have a small impediment.
Well, I remember being with him and him relaxing and talking, and no stuttering at all. You know, when you relax and you'd be talking quite normal.
He said to Tommy said to him, do you think it was any help or any hindrance in your business dealings? And Mark says, I wish I had two of them.
Yeah, that's right. But he asked me one day would I come, he wanted to, so he drove out to McGuigan's scrapyard. Do you remember McGuigan's? Frank McGuigan and brother. Yeah. Out and went in. Frank met us. Frank, I'm looking for a handy wee lorry. Oh, there's one over there, Mark. Look at it. So we went over and looked at it, and Mark kicked around, and he says, Frank might just do the job, but I'm not sure. Can I take it for the weekend? He says, I'll leave the taxi here. He says, can I take it for a couple of days, just to make sure it'll suit the job? Oh yeah, sure, Mark. Because McGuigan's used to drink in the pub and that. They knew him, they were one of the crowd from where they're not. They used to come in and drink there. We got into that lorry that day, straight away. Drove up. We came down and we went back across the border up to, I think it was, where did we go? Halfway to Armagh. What do you call the town halfway to Armagh?
Newton Hamilton.
Newton Hamilton. Mm. And he went into a place there and he loaded the lorry up with butter. And headed down, crossed the border, down the bank, down through Sheila, down to Carlow. And he had some connection in Carlow. Sold the whole lot, unloaded the whole lot, got his money back into McGuigan. And she's making a bit of noise, Frank. I don't know. I'm not too. I don't know.
Got the job
no,
done.
I think I'll see if we can get something else.
Got the job done.
Got into the taxi. We come back. And he gave me 5 shillings for my day's work. He made about 200 quid out of it. Gave me 5 shillings. That was mad.
Smart man.